This is going to be a living document, but I am going to share some texts that exist as Bible for me right now when it comes to literature. Um, and I'm going to begin with three and preface it or forward it or prelude it with something I wrote in undergrad for my thesis, uh, which essentially acts as a forward, but it's a living document. And since then, I have added a couple texts, which I'll also include now. But moving forward, I'll just continue to add literature that is heavily informing how I research and the things that I think about. So, two women and one man profoundly impacted my ways of thinking. These women and men inspired my agency to formalize a vocabulary that authenticates how Black women can occupy academic spaces that tend not to be populated by those who, in fact, constitute the global majority. The philosophies of these three thinkers provide an alternative canon for me to seek fundamental truths about myself and the spaces that I occupy. The first is Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks is an advocate for critical thinking. She consistently granted her ideas to be accessible through language and discussion. Equally, Toni Morrison placed me in a position to see writing as an art form to exercise the brain's capacity to imagine. Her cadence confronts the reader to deliberately re-examine the scene, the language, and the truth. Ruminating on Black portals and articulations of Blackness, Arthur Jafa affords time and space to analyze the ontology of Black being. These intellectuals have provided me with an out of bounds framework that insists on an urgency to become myself, maintain myself, and birth new selves. Essentially, I have been given permission to do it my way, adding to the canon. Per. Okay, so the first text, this is my reading list as a professor, as a teacher, as a thinker, as a tinker, as your contemporary peer, as your friend, foe, lover, friend. Um, the first one is by Bell Hooks, and it is, I always say the text title out of order, so I just want to say it correctly. The first one is Teaching Critical Thinking, Practical Wisdom by Bell Hooks. Now, before I read this text, I was already a advocate for critical thinking, but I had yet to locate the language to fully actualize and articulate myself in the way that Bell Hooks had. I believe that every course in any academic space, honestly, from the age of sixth grade, I would say like sixth grade, you could begin reading this book. Even if you have to read it again multiple times throughout your life, but it ingrains how important and impactful critical thinking is when you're occupying different spaces. How just because you may not necessarily agree with the person doesn't mean that they may not say something or do something that could inform how you're maneuvering through space and times in alignment with you. And it's just Bible for me. Bible for me. The second book is the autobiography of Malcolm X. It's not mentioned in that prelude slash forward, but the autobiography of Malcolm X literally changed the brain chemistry in my mind because from beginning to end, I do believe that Alex Haley captured Malcolm X in a way that I haven't seen anybody else truly capture him as it relates to his story. And as told by Alex Haley, the story revealed to me how important it is to tell the truth and to surrender to your truth and to rid yourself of any shame that you may be experiencing for the life you lived before you were able to come into your more evolved self and being. So the story has multiple chapters, but I see it in two. And I have this idea or theory that you don't truly begin living life until you begin your second life. And that second life is only recognized once you realize that you weren't even living in that first chapter. You weren't evolving beyond the thoughts and ideas of other people. You were trailing behind them. You were puppy dogging behind them. And whatever they said was law. That second life activates itself in your true agency when you come to the realization that you can think for yourself. And in order to think for yourself, you have to begin experiencing life. You have to talk to different types of people. You have to eat with different types of people. You have to be in community, in different environments. You have to reflect on yourself. You have to shed, allow yourself to evolve, take accountability. And in that accountability, you have the ability to shift. I love that book down. That book is always going to be Bible for me. So we have the Autobiography of Malcolm X, and we have, oh my gosh, I always forget the title. Teaching Critical Thinking, Practical Wisdom by Bell Hooks. Um, the second one is Playing in the Dark, Whiteness in the Literary Imagination. Am I saying that correctly? It's the titles, y'all. Playing in the Dark, Whiteness and the Literary Imagination by Toni Morrison. So oftentimes people are more familiar with her stories, but that text, excellent, excellent text. And it really investigates or explores even why she delves into the psyche and the minds of the characters that she does because she's not judging them. There are also Black characters. Um, but Playing in the Dark acts as research into why white authors are often unable to explore the psyche of Black minds. And even when they do that, it is a caricature of. And she investigates both ends of the spectrum with Black people as well, and releasing any type of projections, racial and prejudicial uh, internalizations to be able to articulate yourself in a way that allows yourself to just be in these other characters that also exist. Um, that book is Bible. That book is law. Um, and the essays are fascinating because I mean they really delve into how the literary canon in America um, uses Blackness to, they have defined it for themselves, which may not always be in alignment with how I see Blackness. And what it's like to reckon with that, what it's like to fight against that, and what that tension looks like as somebody who is an author, a writer, and someone who imagines beyond whatever whiteness believes is possible. There's a cap there, and there's not a cap over here. Then we have the first piece of text that I read by Arthur Jafa was My Black Death. And My Black Death is an essay. It's not a long essay, but it's an essay nonetheless. And it talks about, almost if I were to metaphor it or describe it in my own words, which I mean, I'm doing everything right now, it's an interesting essay because it kind of not even kind of, it talks about Blackness existing, but not actually being present. Like its presence is a shadow. It talks about Pablo Picasso. He talks about Jackson Pollock. And he talks about somebody else. Don't beat me up here, okay? Don't beat me up here. Read the essay. Um, and in bringing up these, Marcel Duchamp. He talks about Marcel Duchamp. I'm in agreement too, but you can't necessarily bring up these three artists without bringing up Blackness. And I find that oftentimes, even when I was in school or just in conversation with people, oftentimes people are bringing up these thinkers and artists without bringing up Blackness first. And I do feel like you need to preface, I do think that is an important part of the historical timeline to preface Blackness. Blackness as it exists is part of the diaspora before you're able to bring up any artists who are technically a part of that canon or introduce themselves to that canon by remixing an idea for themselves. Adding to that living list, we have the Undercommons. Fred Moten writes like a mathematician, so I'd be having to sit with a lot of the sentences for some time. One of the title text sections that actually put me on a hold for about 8 to 9 months. I think it's all written up in here like it said professionalization is the privatization of the social individual through negligence. And I had to put so many exclamation marks. I had to circle this. And before I could go on, I had to sit with this because the words, a lot of the way in which Moten writes, it's by Fred Moten and Stefano Harney. The way that they write, he writes, a lot of the words you have to draw arrows back to see what he's targeting. And I had to sit with that. I'm going to read it again so you can sit with it too. Professionalization is the privatization of the social individual through negligence. Which had me thinking about, we had this lecture at the Royal College of Art in London, and they were talking about different grants that they had or resources and opportunities and saying that you had to be professional. So I had raised my hand to ask them, well, what did professionalism look like to them? And they essentially were describing something that meant to clean it up. And I said, well, what is there to clean up when everything is a part of the canon or world building that someone is developing? And so this kind of had everyone, look, but it is a genuine question that I have. What do you mean to clean up? And so now I have this, I mean, I already did, but I have new language to articulate this, but to clean up is a form of negligence. Like you're wanting me to ignore a certain part of myself or a part of my becoming in order to funnel myself into these ideas of professionalization. I'm enjoying this text even though it's taken me some time because although it is a smaller text, the words are quite dense. The sentences are quite dense. Um, and just talking about the intricacies of academic institutions, what that looks like, what it can look like, Black studies and what Black studies look like in these institutions. Um, Excellent text by far. Still not complete with it. These are texts that are Bible for me. This is a living document, and I'm going to add more text. And I'll write these texts and then link this video just for you.